Darien Voss stood in the center of the Grand Zavarian War Hall, surrounded by towering warriors in gleaming battle armor. Their sharp, curved weapons reflected the flickering torches along the walls. The air was thick with tension, and all eyes were locked onto him. He wasn't supposed to be here. Moments ago, he had been negotiating a peace treaty between the Zavarian clans and the Galactic Alliance. Now he was standing in a warrior tribunal, accused of an offense he didn't even understand. At the far end of the hall, seated on a raised platform, was Princess Zyra, her piercing gaze unreadable. Darien had only met her once before, and even then he had known she was different. Strong, confident, and utterly terrifying when angered. And right now, she looked furious. The elder warrior standing beside her pounded his staff against the stone floor. "Human, do you accept the bond you have initiated?" Darien blinked. "The what?" The room erupted into murmurs. Zyra's eyes narrowed dangerously. The elder's voice was sharp. "You performed the rite of sacred union before the war clan, before the princess herself." Darien replayed the last few hours in his head. He had been trying to show respect, had mimicked the Zavarian combat stance to prove his willingness to understand their culture. It had worked, or so he had thought. Apparently, it had meant something entirely different to them. "Wait," Darien said, raising his hands. "Let's go back for a second. What exactly did I do?" Zyra stood, her voice cold. "You challenged me. You declared your claim in front of the war clan." Darien's heart skipped. "What?" Another warrior scoffed. "He plays dumb, yet he spoke the ancient words." Darien frowned. "I don't remember saying any." Then it hit him. The greeting he had been taught by his translator before coming here. He had repeated it earlier with confidence, thinking he was saying, "I stand before you in honor, seeking peace and understanding." But had the translation been wrong? Zyra crossed her arms. "Your words were not a mere greeting. They were a challenge, a claim." Darien groaned internally. This was bad, very bad. He cleared his throat. "So, just to clarify, I accidentally proposed to you." The hall fell into utter silence. Then, one of the warriors, an older, scared veteran, burst into laughter. Others quickly followed, shaking their heads at the sheer absurdity of it. Zyra, however, did not laugh. "Human," she said, stepping down from the platform. "Our traditions are not a joke." She was now standing right in front of him, close enough that Darien could feel the weight of her presence. "You have two choices: honor your words or face the consequences." Darien's stomach twisted. What consequences? The elder raised his staff. To refuse a binding challenge before the war clan is to bring dishonor upon the princess. Dishonor can only be cleansed in combat. Darien's eyes widened. "You mean I have to fight?" Another warrior grinned. "A duel, to the death." Darien let out a slow breath. He had survived countless battles, outwitted some of the best strategists in the galaxy, and even escaped a collapsing starship once. But this... "Great," he muttered. "I was just hoping for a quiet diplomatic mission." Zyra studied him for a long moment before speaking. "What is your choice, human?" Darien looked around at the crowd, at the warriors waiting for him to fail. His mind raced through every possible escape, every loophole. But deep down, he already knew there was only one real way out of this. He exhaled and met Zyra's gaze. "All right, princess," he said with a crooked smile. "Let's get married." Darien Voss had faced impossible odds before. Outnumbered in battles, stranded on hostile worlds, even trapped in a malfunctioning escape pod drifting toward a black hole. But nothing compared to this. He was about to get married by fighting his own bride. The Zavarian War Hall had been transformed into an arena, torches casting flickering shadows across the carved stone walls. Warriors gathered in a wide circle, eager to witness the duel. Some looked amused, others skeptical. Most, however, seemed eager to see how the reckless human would survive this. At the center of the arena, Zyra stood tall, gripping the ceremonial battle staff. Darien let out a slow breath. "So, just so I understand, this is how Zavarian weddings work." An elder warrior smirked. "For warriors, yes. The battle proves strength, trust, and honor. Only the worthy can claim a life bond. Darien eyed the massive battle staff in HFY-SCI's hands. And if I lose? The elder shrugged. Then you are unworthy. Darien frowned. Unworthy how? Like not husband material unworthy, or immediately executed unworthy. The elder didn't answer. HFY-SCI studied him, her expression unreadable. Are you prepared? No. Absolutely not. But Darien wasn't about to back down. He rolled his shoulders and picked up his own staff, much heavier than he expected. Xaverian weapons weren't designed for humans. The balance was off, the grip unfamiliar. Xavera attacked first. She moved fast, too fast, a blur of motion. Darien barely dodged as her staff sliced through the air, missing his ribs by inches. The force of her strike sent a gust of wind against his side. The crowd cheered. Darien stumbled back, gripping his staff tighter. All right, think, Voss. You're not winning with strength. Use your brain. She came at him again, swinging low. This time, he twisted his body, letting the attack pass harmlessly before tapping the back of her staff with his own. A counter-move, a small one, but enough to show he wasn't helpless. Xayra's eyes flashed. She liked that. Darien grinned. Did I pass the first test? She didn't answer. Instead, she spun, attacking from a new angle. Darien barely blocked, the impact sending a shockwave up his arms. His legs nearly buckled. The Xaverian warriors laughed. The human is struggling. Darien groaned. You think? Xayra pressed forward, relentless. But Darien wasn't just reacting anymore. He started to notice patterns, the slight shift in her stance before a strike, the rhythm of her movement. On the next attack, he sidestepped at the last second, letting her momentum carry her past him. He used the moment to tap the back of her shoulder with his staff. Not an attack, just a reminder that he was still standing. The crowd murmured. Xayra turned slowly. Clever. Darien flashed a grin. I have my moments. For a moment, she just watched him. Then, without warning, she lunged. But this time, Darien didn't dodge. Instead, he dropped his staff and caught her wrist mid-strike. The move startled her just long enough for him to twist, using his momentum to spin them both. When they stopped, he was behind her, arms wrapped around hers, locking her in place. The entire hall fell silent. Xayra didn't struggle. She could have broken free if she wanted, but instead, she stood completely still. Darien's voice was quiet. I'm not here to defeat you. Her breathing slowed. Then why are you here? He swallowed. To stand beside you. The silence stretched. Then, slowly, Xayra raised her chin. The battle is over. A cheer erupted from the warriors. The duel was complete. The bond was sealed. Darien sighed. That means I won, right? Xayra smirked. It means we both did. Darien Voss never imagined that his wedding night would involve so many weapons. The Xaverian warriors had thrown a feast in his honor, loud, chaotic, and filled with way too much alcohol. He had been pulled into drinking contests, forced to demonstrate human battle techniques, and even had to dodge a ceremonial dagger someone jokingly tossed his way. Now finally, after what felt like hours of survival, he stood in a private chamber, his new home with Xayra. The room was dimly lit by glowing blue crystals embedded in the walls. Soft fabrics lined the floor, and a large circular window revealed the endless stars beyond. The air smelled of something unfamiliar but pleasant. Darien exhaled and turned to Xayra. I feel like I just survived a gladiator match. She folded her arms. You did well. Most outsiders do not make it past the first hour. He blinked. Wait, that was a test. She tilted her head. Everything is a test. Darien sighed and rubbed his temple. Of course it is. For a moment, there was silence. A strange, tense kind of silence. This was real now. He wasn't just a guest or a foreigner. He was her husband. Xayra stepped closer. You are not what I expected, Darien Voss. He chuckled. That makes two of us. She studied him for a long moment. Then, to his surprise, she reached for his hand. A small, but deliberate gesture. Her grip was firm, steady. Darian looked down at their hands. So, what happens now? Is there another duel I don't know about? Her lips twitched slightly. No more battles. At least, not tonight. He smirked. Good, because I think I pulled something back there. She didn't laugh, but something in her expression softened. You have earned your place, but this life will not be easy. There will be challenges. Our people do not always trust outsiders. Darian nodded. I figured. You will be tested again and again. Of course I will. She studied him for a moment longer before nodding. Then we will face it together. Darian felt something shift in his chest, a warmth he didn't expect. He squeezed her hand gently. Yeah, together. Outside the window, the stars burned bright. Darian woke up to the sound of weapons clashing. For a brief moment, he forgot where he was. Then the memories came rushing back. The wedding, the feast, the endless Xaverian challenges, and now, apparently, morning duels. He groaned, sitting up on the soft bedding. Across the room, Tyra was already dressed, strapping a long blade to her back. You're serious, he muttered, rubbing his face. She glanced at him. The morning drills are necessary. A strong warrior must be prepared at all times. Darian sighed. Great, first day as a husband, and I'm already behind schedule. Zara crossed the room and placed something on the bed, a set of warrior training garments made of durable, flexible fabric. You will join us. Darian raised an eyebrow. Wait, really? I thought I was just the strange earthling husband. She gave him a look. You are my husband. That means you are part of this clan, and part of this clan means proving yourself. Darian stared at the outfit. He had barely survived last night. Now they wanted him to spar before breakfast. Fantastic. 15 minutes later, he stood in the middle of a large training ground, surrounded by warriors twice his size. The Xaverian sun was already high, casting long shadows across the stone arena. Xyra stood beside him, arms crossed. The challenge is simple. You must hold your ground for 3 minutes. Darian frowned. Hold my ground. Against what? A huge Xaverian warrior stepped forward, cracking his knuckles. Oh, Darian muttered. Against him. Got it. The warrior smirked. Do not worry, human. I will try not to break you too quickly. Darian let out a slow breath. Appreciate it. The match began. The warrior lunged. Fast, powerful, and completely terrifying. Darian barely dodged, rolling out of the way as the ground cracked where he had stood. He scrambled to his feet. No way could he outmatch this guy in strength, but speed. That he had. The next attack came. A heavy punch aimed straight at his chest. Darian ducked, sidestepped, and grabbed the warrior's arm, using his own momentum against him. The Xaverian stumbled forward, momentarily off balance. A murmur ran through the crowd. Darian smirked. That actually worked. His confidence lasted exactly 2 seconds before the warrior spun and sent him flying across the arena. He hit the ground hard, dust rising around him. Zyra's voice rang out. Get up. Darian groaned, easy for her to say. But he wasn't about to give up. He pushed himself up, shaking off the pain. All right, big guy. Round 2. The warrior grinned. You are not weak, human. Yeah, well, I drink a lot of coffee. The next minute was a blur, dodging, countering, narrowly avoiding getting crushed. Darian wasn't winning, but he was still standing. Finally, Zyra raised a hand. Enough. The warrior stopped. The crowd nodded in approval. Darian staggered, catching his breath. So, did I pass? Zyra stepped forward. She looked at him for a long moment, then gave a small nod. You fought well. Darian smirked. Good. Now, can I get some breakfast? The warriors laughed. And for the first time, Darian felt like maybe, just maybe, he belonged here. Darian sat at the long stone table, his entire body aching. Every muscle felt like it had been stomped on by a battle cruiser, but at least he had survived the morning challenge. Now, however, he faced a new trial, the Xaverian breakfast feast. In front of him were dishes filled with steaming, unfamiliar foods. Some looked edible, others moved. Vzera sat beside him, perfectly composed, eating with swift, precise movements. Across the table, several warriors watched him, clearly waiting to see if he would flinch. Darian picked up a piece of something that looked like roasted meat and took a cautious bite. It was smoky, tender, not bad. Then he reached for a bowl of dark jelly-like cubes. The second it hit his tongue, a sharp, electric sensation ran through his mouth. Darian jerked upright, eyes wide. What? Vzera finally smirked. Ah, that is Vakran root. It stimulates the nerves. Darian coughed, grabbing a drink. Yeah, no kidding. The warriors chuckled, impressed. He did not spit it out. He is learning. Darian exhaled. Yeah, learning the hard way. But deep down, he was getting used to it. The trials, the tests, the endless challenges. They were watching him, waiting to see if he could handle life here, and he wasn't about to let them down. After breakfast, Syra led him through a vast stone hall, lined with glowing runes. This was the Chamber of Councils, where Xaverian leaders made important decisions. Darian frowned. So, what's next? Another duel, wrestling a space beast. Vzera stopped at a set of tall doors. No, this is a test of your mind. Darian blinked. Oh, that's different. Inside, several elders sat in a semicircle. Their expressions were unreadable. Vzera spoke. My husband will now face the trial of strategy. One of the elders leaned forward. Human, we will present you with a problem. You must solve it without force. Darian nodded, trying to push past his exhaustion. All right. Hit me. The elder tapped a glowing screen. A Xaverian ship is trapped in an asteroid field. Its engines are damaged. Enemy raiders are approaching. What do you do? Darian rubbed his chin. Back home, he had played plenty of space strategy games. This felt a little too real. He thought fast. Okay. First, scan the asteroid field for the largest rock. Then, use the ship's remaining thrusters to nudge it into the enemy's path. If the raiders have to dodge, that buys time for a distress signal. The elders exchanged looks. One nodded. A clever response. But there is another problem. The enemy has already blocked communications. Darian grinned. All right, then we make them think we called for help. The elders raised their brows. Darian explained. Divert power to external lights. Flash a signal like it's a distress call. The raiders might assume reinforcements are coming and retreat. Silence filled the chamber. Then, slowly, the elders nodded in approval. Vzera crossed her arms. He has passed. Darian smirked. Wait, that's it. No getting punched this time. Zyra's expression softened, just a little. Not everything is solved with fists. Darian exhaled. Finally, a challenge that didn't leave him bruised. And for the first time, he saw it, the way Zyra looked at him, not as an outsider, but as her partner. Darian stood in the grand hall, his heartbeat steady but alert. The trial of strategy was over, and he had passed. But just as he was about to relax, Kyra turned to him with a new challenge. You have proven your mind, she said, her voice carrying a mix of amusement and authority. Now, you must prove your spirit. Darian raised an eyebrow. Oh great, what does that mean? More fighting. One of the Xaverian warriors smirked. Not quite. The large doors of the hall swung open, revealing a wide open courtyard lit by soft golden lanterns. The air was warm, carrying the faint scent of exotic flowers. A steady rhythmic beat filled the space as warriors gathered, their sharp gazes filled with anticipation. Darian frowned. Wait, is this a warrior's dance? Zyra confirmed. Darian groaned. Oh, come on. I survived duels, mind games, and food that nearly electrocuted me. Now I have to dance. Zyra smirked. You are my husband. It is expected. Darian sighed dramatically but straightened his shoulders. All right, but just so you know, my last dance lesson was at a wedding, and I might have stepped on some toes. Vzera chuckled, stepping forward, then tried to keep up. The music shifted. A deep, powerful rhythm that sent energy through the ground. The warriors clapped in time, creating a pulse that echoed in Darian's chest. Vzera moved first, Fluid, controlled, each step precise yet graceful. She spun, extended her arms, and her presence commanded the space. The crowd watched in admiration. Darian, however, was still figuring out where to put his feet. "All right, just move with the beat," he muttered to himself, stepping forward. Zara circled him, challenging him with her gaze. It wasn't just a dance, it was a display of strength, control, and trust. Darian took a deep breath. Okay, if this was a test, he was going to pass. He moved, mimicking her steps, trying to match her rhythm. At first he was clumsy, but then he realized this was like dodging attacks, reading movements, anticipating the next step. Zara noticed the shift. Her lips curved slightly, a rare smile of approval. The warriors began to cheer. The tempo increased. Darian matched her stride, his confidence growing. Then, Zara spun toward him, closing the distance. A challenge. Darian reacted on instinct, catching her hand, pulling her close. The crowd let out a roar of surprise. For a moment, they stood there, breathless, the space between them almost non-existent. Zara looked into his eyes, really looked. For the first time, there was no test, no trial, just the two of them, caught in the rhythm of something neither could explain. Darian smirked. "So, did I pass?" Zara's gaze softened. She didn't answer. Instead, she reached up and lightly touched his face. A silent acknowledgement. The dance continued, but something had changed. The challenge had become something else entirely. A bond. And for the first time, Darian didn't feel like an outsider. He felt like he belonged. Darian woke up to the sound of cheering and clashing weapons. For a moment, he forgot where he was. Then it all came rushing back. The warrior's dance, the way Zara had looked at him, the way he had felt, like he finally belonged. But today was different. He stepped out into the courtyard, where a massive crowd had gathered. Zavarian warriors stood in formation, their eyes fixed on a central platform. At the center of it all, Zara stood tall, arms crossed, her expression unreadable. "What's going on?" Darian asked, moving through the crowd. One of the warriors smirked. "Your final test, human." Darian sighed. "You guys really don't take a day off, do you?" The warrior chuckled. "This is different. You're not the one being tested." Darian blinked. "Wait. What?" Zara finally spoke, her voice calm but firm. "Someone has challenged our union." The word sent a chill through the air. The crowd murmured in excitement. Darian's stomach dropped. "Challenged? As in, someone does not believe you are worthy." Zara said, "And by tradition, they have the right to prove it." Darian rubbed his forehead. "So let me guess, I have to fight them." Zara shook her head. "No, I do." Darian stared. "You?" The crowd parted, and from their ranks, a massive Zavarian warrior stepped forward. His armor was adorned with clan markings, and his stance radiated pure confidence. "General Varric," someone whispered, "the strongest warrior in the Empire." Darian groaned. "Oh, great. Of course, it's the strongest guy here." Zara ignored him and turned to Varric. "Stake your claim." Varric's voice was deep and commanding. "You are one of our greatest warriors, Kyra. You deserve a mate who strengthens you, not a human who weakens you." Darian felt his blood boil. Weak? Was that what they all thought? That he wasn't good enough? Zara's expression didn't change. "The choice is mine." Varric shook his head. "It is our tradition." He stepped forward. "If I defeat you, the bond is broken." Darian clenched his fists. This wasn't just a test. This was an attempt to take Zara from him. She turned to Darian. For the first time, there was hesitation in her gaze. Darian took a breath and smirked. "Kick his ass." The crowd erupted in cheers as Zara stepped onto the platform. The fight began in an instant. Varric lunged, fast and brutal, but Zara dodged, twisting away with perfect control. She countered with a sharp strike, but Varric blocked, forcing her back. The clash of their blows sent shockwaves through the courtyard. Each strike was precise, every movement a deadly dance. Darian watched in awe. He had always known Zara was strong, But this was something else. She fought with a grace and power that made it clear she was not someone to be claimed. She was someone who chose. And she had chosen him. The fight raged on, but Darian could see it. Zira wasn't just fighting. She was proving a point. With a final, lightning-fast strike, she knocked Varric to the ground, her weapon at his throat. The courtyard fell silent. Varric breathed heavily, then finally he nodded. "You have made your choice." Zira lowered her weapon, "And I will not change it." The crowd erupted in cheers. Darian let out a breath he didn't realize he was holding. Zira turned to him, her gaze softer than before. Darian grinned. "So, I'm still your husband, right?" Zira smirked. "For now." And for the first time, Darian knew he had truly won. Darian sat on the edge of the grand balcony, looking out over the alien city that had somehow become his home. The twin moons cast a silver glow over the towering spires and the winding streets below, where warriors and scholars moved through the night. Zira stood beside him, her arms crossed as she stared out at the horizon. The silence between them was comfortable, but Darian could feel the weight of everything that had happened. "You fought for us today," he said finally. "Not just for me, but for your right to choose." Zira nodded. "And I will fight again, if necessary." Darian chuckled. "I'm starting to think I married the scariest woman in the universe." Zira smirked. "You did." He grinned. "Good, because I don't plan on going anywhere." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The wind carried the distant sounds of celebration, warriors laughing, the hum of music, the occasional clash of sparring. Then, Zira's voice softened. "You were right about one thing, Darian." He raised an eyebrow. "I was." "That's new." She ignored his teasing and turned to face him fully. "Humans are impossible." Darian blinked. Thanks." Zira let out a rare laugh, then shook her head. "No, I mean it. Everyone said a human could never survive our world, that you could never understand our ways, that you would break under the pressure of our traditions." She stepped closer, her gaze unreadable. "But you didn't." Darian swallowed. "Yeah, well, I had a good reason to fight." Zira tilted her head. "And what reason is that?" He exhaled slowly. "You." The word hung between them, heavier than any declaration of battle, stronger than any vow spoken before a crowd. For the first time, Zira's usual sharp confidence wavered. She searched his expression, as if trying to determine if he was speaking the truth. Finally, she sighed. "You are a fool, Varian." He smirked. "And you love me for it." Zira didn't answer. She didn't have to. Instead, she did something unexpected, something that left Darian completely speechless. She reached out and took his hand. Not in the way she did in combat, not in the way a warrior might grip the arm of an ally, but in a way that was deliberate, personal, intimate. Darian felt his heart pound. The strongest warrior in the Empire, the woman who had faced armies without fear, the one who had defeated the greatest general of her people. And here she was, standing beside him, not as a conqueror, not as a warrior, but as his wife. "Do not let it go to your head, human," Zira muttered. Darian grinned. Too late. She sighed, but didn't pull her hand away. Below them, the city lights flickered, the stars stretched endlessly above, and somewhere in the distance, a new legend was already beginning. The story of the human who did the impossible.